Hello, welcome once again to IrishRacing.com's Jump to It betting preview show for the weekend's action. Now, of course, there is actually some racing going ahead this weekend. The disappointment of Ascot being called off, we'll get to in later on in the show. The Clarence House, of course, Energumene, Edwardstone was going to be a really good feature, but has been postponed. So we're going to get to the racing at Haydock, also at Lingfield on Sunday and Thurles. So joining me to discuss all of the action that is hopefully taking place, I have Ed Quigley and Stephen Harris with me. So Ed, just to get your views basically on Ascot being cancelled, how disappointing it was, and the action this weekend.
Yeah, the cold snap's taken its toll, hasn't it, for that Grade 1 card there. Essentially looked to match, almost a little bit reminiscent of last year's race, wasn't it? Shishkin against Energumene, but Arkle Tingle Creek winner. Edwardstone due to take on Energumene, the first and second favourites for the champion chase in just over 7 weeks' time. Not to be. Look, there's all sorts of Twitter rumours going around that the BHA are in talks. I'm wondering whether maybe I'm looking through rose-tinted glasses, but they could reschedule it for Cheltenham's trials weekend next weekend. It would seem logical, wouldn't it? If you've got your two best 2-milers in training, why not have a kind of a pre-match match at Cheltenham next week? It'd be good. If we can get these races on, let's get them on. You could reopen the entries and hopefully we might even get a slightly bigger field. But yeah, as you say, fingers crossed. We've got Haydock going ahead. Good action at Lingfield on Sunday in the Winter Million Bonanza 9-race card that's been shuffled in there. And also some good action in Ireland as well. Let's not forget, we've got Allegory de Vassy running in the Mayor's Novice Chase. And then a cracker at the 140 in that Grade 2 with Chacal Boussois and Fakir Duderi et al. So fingers crossed a few of these meetings duck and dive the cold weather because there should be plenty of good action to get stuck into.
Lovely stuff. And Stephen, just to bring you in as well, how are things going on Betting Expert this week?
Yeah, pretty quiet again, Joe. Not been flying at all. It's been a lot of low-grade all-weather action. I'm sort of getting lockdown flashbacks over the last week or so where it's hard to generate much enthusiasm for sort of Class 6 all-weather 5-runner handicaps when your Betting Expert daily nap trebles in price pre-race and duly finishes 5th of 5. It's not been great, but it's given us a good chance. I know Ed and I do a lot of preparation for Cheltenham in 7.5 weeks' time, so it has given a chance to sort of crack on, get the sort of early thoughts down about that, which has been useful. But it'd be good if we get racing this weekend. I mean, I wouldn't say Haydock's definitely going to be on. There was a very upbeat photograph on Twitter from the track this morning, which sort of looked like a lovely sunny day. It was like Costa Blanca almost, Haydock. But I mean, I've heard that they are still, they've still got frozen patches. I wouldn't bet 10 on it goes ahead, but let's just hope it does for everyone's sake.
Yeah, of course, an inspection at 8 o'clock, I think, is planned, and hopefully it doesn't need another inspection after that.
Well, that'll be the first one, and the last one will be about 12:30 when everyone's arrived, I expect. But no, we're not going to moan this weekend. You must stay upbeat. No moaning. No.
I'm always upbeat. Don't worry about that.
Great stuff. And Ed, I wanted to get your view as well on the Stayers hurdle. Yeah, Stephen touches on Cheltenham, of course, so the news this week, Classical Dream out of it, Flooring Porter potentially out. Let's take us through it.
Yeah, I mean, Classical Dream, not definitely out, but taking it day by day was the official line from Willie Mullins. Flooring Porter, obviously the 2-time defending champion, quote, only 50-50 to make the gig now after a setback. As you said, we start going through the runners and riders potentially that are going to line up in this. This is looking like, I think I described it as equine roulette about a month ago. It's now almost going the opposite way, and that there's going to be nothing left to run here. Flooring Porter potentially not making the gig. Classical Dream on the sidelines. Blazing Cow hasn't been seen for donkey's years. He's injured. Marie's Rock's head into the mares. Sagard's making his chase debut next week. 100 to 1 Monkfish lines up. Ashdale Bob hasn't won for 2 years. Buzz hasn't run since a fractured pelvis, etc., etc., etc. This race is going to cut up dramatically, which is no surprise here. I think there's a few trainers have put some speculative entries in here, shall we say, thinking this could be the most wide-open renewal of this since medieval times. I mean, my 2-Vida field for a while now been to Hoopu and Paisley Park, mainly because I just think as long as they're bubble wrap, they're going to line up and they're going to go there with major claims. I mean, Paisley Park, we know, loves Cheltenham, won it before, placed in the last 2 renewals, looked more or less as good as ever when winning a Grade 1 over the Christmas period. He heads to the Cleve Hurdle at Cheltenham next weekend, where if he wins that, then he's pretty much second favourite, isn't he? And then Tahupu, who, according to Gordon Elliott, will be going to the Stayers Hurdle, tackling 3 miles for the first time. You could argue he holds the single best piece of form out of any of these horses this season in beating Honeysuckle and Classical Dream in the Hatton's Grace. So maybe he needs soft ground to be seen to his best. But they're my 2 Vida Fields still. It's a funny old race, this. To say we looked at it a month ago, Joe, and we were like, crikey, that we could have a 20 runner field here and you could run the race 20 times, get 20 different winners. It is, would not be shocked if we got a single figure field for the Stayers Hurdle, with everything trying to beat the now horse, shall we say, Home by the Lee, who's definitely been an improver this season. So yeah, fascinating stuff, at least from an anti-post perspective anyway.
Of course, we'll dive deeper into the Stayers amongst all the other Cheltenham races closer to the time. It's not long now, of course, Ed. You know that. It's only, 7 weeks to go? Yeah, let's get to that later on in the programme. So anyway, we're going to move on now to our first feature race. We're going to talk about, Haydock, the 130 Supreme Trial in nature, but none of these are going to be going for the Supreme, I wouldn't have thought, at least not in contention, of course, against Constitution Hill. But Ed, just take us through your thoughts on how this race lines up.
Yeah, these novices. Oh, yeah, Constitution Hill will be a champion hurdle here, Joe. But your sentiment remains true in the sense that I'd be shocked if any of these were good enough to be troubling the likes of Facile Vega or Impair on Pass or any of those caliber of horses who line up. And that's kind of reflected by the official figures in some regards. You've got horses here rated in the 120s and early 130s. I suppose Pembroke is where the market is going, and this horse arrives here on a hat trick, been going through the gears and won nicely at Ludlow last time out, and coming home in a common canter. Worth on the wider point touching on the Dan Skelton form, where after a very kind of bleak midwinter for them, I mean December went they went really off the boil, didn't they? Yeah, the Skelter team has started 2023 absolutely on fire. I mean, for the last fortnight, they've been operating at touching a 40% strike rate. He's got his string and fine fettle. I thought all these trainers are supposed to give the horses flu jabs, and they all totally go off the boil. Well, that's not the case at the moment. So, look, not a race I'm particularly going to get involved with. I mean, I thought Chasing Fire looked a lovely prospect and to be a nice chaser in time. Again, that individual did it in a very handsome style at Market Racing last time out. But as ever, Joe, you've got to take things, tread carefully here. If the meeting does go ahead, this is going to be, ground like quicksand. This is going to be really testing. It's going to be heavy. It's going to be gluey. There's going to be no hiding place. So with these novices, these 5-year-olds, this could... how should we say, be a bit of a livener. This could shake them up a little bit. I think, you're going to have to really be a bit tough and battle hardened. And for a young horse, it might not be what is required at this stage of their career. So all in all, I'm going to fence it with this. Be interesting to see how these horses shape up with a view to, I think there's a lot of good long-term chasers further down the line.
So, yeah, I mean, just thinking back to last weekend as well, we were talking about Dan Skelton's form. It wasn't all that great, but obviously turned things around last weekend, of course. So, Stephen, just take us through your thoughts on this race and also, Pembroke for Dan Skelton especially.
Yeah, I think Pembroke is the standout contender, not least of all, as Ed said, that he's on 40%. He's had 6 winners in the last fortnight. Dan, and on Saturdays, he's been absolutely flying. I mean, they have made a conscientious effort, haven't they? They've gone away from quantity and the summer, which he now almost forgets about altogether, and they're looking for quality. They're looking for Saturday winners. And when the Irish runners are avoided, it's working. He's got Paul Nicholls to beat, and he's been beating him every now and then. They've been running really well. Pembroke looks a really nice prospect. He'll definitely handle heavy ground. I mean, Ed said, and he's right, this will be as bad as it gets at Haydock. It's been under covers. It's heavy ground already. They will be absolutely walking home. And I don't think Pembroke will mind that at all. He flew round Wetherby on heavy ground on his second run over hurdles, winning impressively. And last time out at Ludlow, he was on the bridle throughout. I think he won by 16 lengths in the end. And the third, Western Zephyr, is a useful horse at Longston. He's come out and landed the odds at Huntingdon since. So there's a little bit of depth to the form. The 2 others in the market, the top one, Chasing Fire, who looks a really nice prospect. I think his jumping might be a slight issue in this much better race. He's been a little bit ponderous at Market Racing twice. That'll probably improve with more experience. But my theory with Ollie Murphy's horses is they don't tend to go on. He tends to have them ready, fit and firing, and you get them at their best at the start. You're not tending to think sort of 10 runs later, oh yes, he's developed into a cracking graded performer. You're thinking, why is he running in a handicap at Hexham, having lost his way? So Chasing Fire's a lovely prospect, but I just think he might struggle with his jumping. And the horse of Nichols, who flew round Fakenham on pretty decent eased ground, I think he's quite a hard puller. I'm not sure Haydock on heavy would be ideal, although Cobden replaces Bryony and obviously Nichols flying. So anyway, the long and the short of that is I think Pembroke will be very hard to beat, but there's some interesting unexposed horses in the race. It'll be a very strongly run race, this, because Matata is an absolute bolter, will be 15 lengths clear going mad unless Jacob can restrain that one. So they're going to go a proper gallop. It's going to be a real test of stamina, and I think Pembroke, with Harry sort of sitting motionless, can come through late.
Yeah, nice, encouraging views there on Pembroke. Should be a straightforward winner, I'm guessing. Let's move on to the next race on the cards. This is going to look at the 205. Now, this is why I had Constitution Hill in mind, because Epatante goes in here. Obviously, Epatante was beaten by Constitution Hill last time out. But, I mean, just Ed, can we just write off that form for Epatante, do you think, because Constitution Hill is so good?
Yeah, yes, you can to an extent. I mean, look, nothing is getting anywhere near Constitution Hill, it has to be said. I mean, you look at John Bomb, for example, he's lost one race in his career. That was the Constitution Hill. He's done everything else before him. Epatante, I spoke to Aidan Coleman a couple of weeks ago. He said he really is getting fed up. We're chasing the backside of Constitution Hill, just disappearing as he accelerates during the home straight. But I'll be taking Epatante on here just because... a slog in a bog is not what you'd associate with this former champion hurdle winner for Nikki Henderson. She's got a turn of foot. She quickens up well on good ground. She's around, she's touching twos on in places here. Again, if this goes ahead, this is going to be really testing. I'd just be very nervous about getting involved at that type of price in this race, and I'd be very keen on. I like to move it. For the Sam and Nigel Twister-Davies combination. The negative first is that conversely, juxtaposed to the Skelton team, the Twister-Davies team have gone right off the board. I don't think they've had a winner in January yet, which is a bit of a worry. Some of the horses have been running well in defeat, admittedly, and not all been dropping out the back of the television. But other than that, I think I like to move it. Could be the one to cash in here. I was there on the rails New Year's Day, where I like to move it. Was sent off favourite to win the Rowkeel hurdle, won by Marie's Rock. Really disappointed. Sam Twister-Davies got off the horse straight away and said, look, we tried to make a horse who doesn't stay, and he didn't stay. It's straightforward as that. That was soft ground on the new course, 2.5 miles. He fell in a hole. I think there's going to be no messing around here. Back to the minimum trip on a flat track. He'll revert back to his prominent kind of swashbuckling tactics. And I just wonder if he can run the finish out of Epatante. Truly run 2 miles on deep ground. Just gets me nervous. Epatante 2's on. No, I like to move it. One is bumper on very deep ground. All that his hurdle form has come on a stable surface. I think he can really serve it up to her there. Yes, she gets the mare's allowance, but on official figures, I like to move it. Only has £1 to find with the odds-on favourite, and so the others, I'm not totally blown away. Manila Drama kind of mixes fences and hurdles. For all that, Donald McCain is having a great revival. I suppose Jason the Militant is the kind of joker in the pack there. Having joined the Philip Kirby team from Henry de Bromhead. This was a horse who essentially Henry de Bromhead labelled as an out-and-out mudlark. I think all his wins have come on ground described as heavy or maybe soft on one occasion. So a little bit of guesswork with new connections as to whether the fire still burned. But at 25 to 1 or thereabouts, you wouldn't be shocked if Jason the Militant ran a decent race, given that he's going to have his underfoot conditions. But all in all, yeah, Epatante for me, I think she's vulnerable on this ground and on this day. And I'd be with, I like to move it here as the value pick.
Yeah, well, Ed, you give me a nice plug here for the Irish Racing website because you can filter by going type. So this is obviously Jason the Militant's form on going description of heavy or soft and heavy in places. See lots of wins there. But Stephen, what's your thoughts on Epatante here? Is it a lay for you?
Well, I mean, I think Ed has absolutely summed it up perfectly this race. I mean, I'm dying to take on Epatante because I don't think she's what she once was. I think she wants to glide round Kempton on good ground, which is right-handed, a test of speed, which is what she's always had. In her early days, she was a real hard puller. It took a long time to get her settled, but obviously she's much more the finished article. Now she's clear on ratings. The one thing she's got in her favour here is that there's a lot of pace on. If For Pleasure tries to lead, I think he could be real spoiling value for I Like to Move It. I mean, I do think I Like to Move It, who's going to be sort of 3-1, 7-2, is probably the one you have to side with. But I do think there are buts about his chance. I mean, I suppose, if I'm being honest, if you could manage to get Epatante cheap at sort of 7-or on, 2-1 on, and put I Like to Move It in at sort of 3-1 as well, well, they're betting 10-1 on the front two, Joe, which is a very short price because both of them have not got any heavy ground form at all. I mean, I Like to Move It won his bumper on soft back in the day, but he's basically been running on good to soft ground most of his career. They've tended to avoid the extremes, and they certainly have with Epatante. I mean, has run well in a soft ground champion. I don't think it's really what she wants. So 10-1 on the front two. If you could get them that cheap, I'd have to be putting my bookmaker hat back on and sticking them in the hod. I think the one who might be overpriced is Nell's Son, who's 8, who's trained in the north by Nicky Richards. It's hardly your sort of optimum idea of what a graded winner looks like, but has run a bit better than the Bear Result twice this winter in fair company. Will get a hold-up ride, and if For Pleasure leads, which will be a spoiler for I Like to Move It, maybe it'll be made for something off the back. They get racing a long way out at Haydock in heavy ground. They can all stop. So I'd be looking for something like that and perhaps lay the front two.
So yeah, a bit of a upset on the cards potentially in that one. Let's move on to the next race on the cards. So kind of disappointing in terms of the numbers here. So we've got 6 declared for the Peter Marsh Chase. Could even be that Bristol de Mai doesn't go here. But Stephen, just take us through your thoughts. I know you've been a fan of Bristol de Mai in the past. The old boy, could he get it done here?
Well, I was a fan of him about 5 years ago. I mean, he's always a horse. He's a brilliant jumper. Revels in heavy ground at Haydock, so he's got his conditions. He is now 12. He's one of those horses who's definitely been on the downgrade for at least a couple of seasons. And it's always amused me. Nigel Tristan-Davies is quite a chippy trainer. People say to him, well, he's not quite what he was, is he, Nigel? He's better than ever. I've never had him better at home. He's bouncing out, and he comes to the racetrack, and he usually doesn't deliver now away from these conditions. I've selected Dr. Kananga here basically because I think at least he's got a little bit more upside than some of these. He's not had that many runs over fences. He wants to front run, which I suppose, again, Bristol de Mai is liable to take up that role. It might not be ideal. He ran perfectly well over hurdles on his return, and then he was unable to dominate and weakened out of things. Perhaps he bounced at Aintree in a big field handicap, but he's got plenty of heavy ground form from the front. He ran an absolute screamer at Exeter last season. He's a likeable horse from a small yard. You know, if you get double figures about him, I think that's probably a better way to go. I know Ed is very keen on the lovable old veteran, though, isn't he?
Well, over to you, Ed.
Yeah. Well, I'm wondering if we're being a bit ageist here. When you actually break the race down, I mean, you've got Cooper's Cross, who's £6 out of the handicap. You've got Black Lion, who's 14, running from out of the handicap. I mean, straight away, I'm putting a line through those two. So in my mind, it's a 4-runner race. Empire Steel, you can make a case for on peak form. Dr. Kananga as well. I agree with Stephen. I don't think there's not much depth to it, essentially. And Bristol de Mai, I mean, Haydock de Mai. Yeah, I know he's 12 years young, but this is, I mean, he's got 6 wins on the CV here. He loves running in quicksand. I mean, this is going to be a real test. And he's gone from swimming with sharks to, paddling around in the swimming pool here. I mean, last time out, he was in the Betfair Chase, taking on the reigning Gold Cup winner, a Denman Chase winner, a King George winner, and your Gold Cup third in Protectorat. And he's gone from that into essentially what I'm not trying to be disrespectful, but basically a 4-runner handicap off 154. This is a huge drop in grade, and I wouldn't be shocked if this was his kind of swan song, and he won this and they retired him. To be honest with you, I know he's got a big weight. I know he's 12. Blah 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 blah. But heavy ground on at Haydock is his bag. But and going back to Stephen's earlier point. In regards to his regression, yes, he is regressing, but I've got no issue with that in handicaps as long as the assessor reacts accordingly, which is exactly what is happening, because he's gone from his peak rating 173 and he's continuing to tumble down. He's down to 154 now. So, the handbrake is coming off And all in all, this is the easiest race he has run in about 6 years. He's got his ground. He's had his favourite track. It's kind of now or never for Bristol de Mai. And I think he's going to really serve it up to Venetia's horse here. He's probably the right favourite on balance. It's off a £5 higher mark than when winning at Haydock back in November. She probably, the younger legs there could prevail, but I do think Bristol de Mai, coming to 2 out at least anyway, I think he'll be bang there jumping for fun. And if the fire's still burn, I think he'll take some passing.
Oh, lovely stuff. Hopefully a nice little send-off there for Bristol de Mai, potentially. Well, we'll see what happens, of course. Right, let's move over to Sunday. We've got a race at Lingfield, the 2 o'clock Fleur de Lis chase. Again, Bristol de Mai is here in the entries, but probably is going to go for Haydock. But Stephen, I know you're quite keen on one in this one.
Yeah, I like one at double figures here. It's Sam Brown, another real mudlark. He's a veteran now. Anthony Honeyball is another trainer who sort of went missing for about 3 months before Christmas. But they've revived now. I think they might have had something on them. He had a couple of winners before the big freeze. And Sam Brown, well, he ran really well first time out in the Charlie Hall, behind Brave Man's Game. That form reads really well now with the subsequent exploits of the King George winner, of course. He took a step back next time at Aintree. He was tailed off last to 5. Perhaps he bounced, perhaps the yard was out of form. But he's run once at Lingfield on heavy ground. He came home alone by about 3 fences. Many years ago, admittedly, in a novice chase, but that's not the end of what he was a winner at Aintree last season of a really red-hot handicap. The key with him is deep, unraceable ground. He's definitely going to get it here. I mean, we're saying about Haydock on Saturday, hopefully, heavy ground there. Lingfield is as bad as it gets. I always remember in my spread betting days when I worked for a firm in town, Lingfield was one of those places you should always buy the SPs as a punter because in heavy ground, they get results there, and it is that kind of track. I mean, we're going to assume, I think, Joe, that Bristol de Mai will run at Haydock, so that's one less. I think Sam Brown, he's 10-1 at the moment. He'll probably be less than that once they take out and reform the market. But 3rd run of the season, he's had a little break. He's got all his accoutrements on. Aidan Coleman booked, who knows him well. What I'm actually hoping for is that he'll front run, because he front run when he won at Lingfield in the past. He's a strong traveller. He doesn't have a gear change, but he does stay. And if they can pop him off in front round here, I don't think they'll get past him. I think he's one of the better bets of the weekend.
And Ed, for you as well, I mean, just how important is the course form here for you?
Yeah, naturally, any course form is vital. As you say, he's a horse who I think he's had 10 starts on heavy, and he's won 5 of them and placed on 4 other occasions. So that pretty much tells you all you need to know about Sam Brown. A genuine mudlark, and on ratings, the best horse in the field as well. A bit of a trappy contest, not one I'm wildly keen on to get involved with. 2 for Gold, obviously last year's winner, coming back after a little layoff. The visor on for the first time. 10 years young, they'll be hoping for a bold show. He does stay well. Again, if you were forcing me for a tentative selection, Brave Siaska for Venetia Williams and Charlie Deutsch. Love soft ground, as most of Venetia's do. Won very nicely at Aintree on the comeback before disappointing at Cheltenham on New Year's Day. I've got a feeling that horse, Cheltenham's not his track. Perhaps, if you kind of take the 2 disappointments at Cheltenham out of the way, there's an argument to say he could be favourite for this, and not all horses act at Cheltenham, of course. So I'll be interested with him away from Cheltenham. He looked pretty smart and progressive when up in trip at Aintree the time before. So I might be keeping an eye on the market, shall we say, with this. And if I can get a bit of value on Brave Siaska, maybe as the 3rd or 4th favourite, and I might get involved. But powder dry for now.
Lovely stuff. Fair enough. But now we're going to move on to the final race we're going to look at kind of in more depth. And Ed, just take us through the 140 at Thirders. Some interesting runners in this one.
Yeah, indeed, 140 at Thirders. Just very quickly before that, you've got Allegory de Vassy running in the Grade 2 Mares Novice Chase. Obviously, she is joint favourite for the Mares Chase at the Cheltenham Festival in March. Joint favourite Impervious, of course, we saw recently, who goes straight there, according to connections. But yeah, going on to the race after the 140, this looks a humdinger, doesn't it? Chacun pour soi is kind of getting to must-win territory for this 11-year-old now, who's just it's all just started to unravel slightly, hasn't it? In recent times, I think he's only won one of his last 5 starts. Obviously, there's been a few valid excuses in amongst them. Made the bad error over Christmas, didn't he? Unseated at the Cheltenham Festival, then bumped into a Nurgamine in between. So you can make a case why he's been disappointing, but he's got a lot on his plate here again. Fakir Duderi, to me, looks the one. This is a horse who excels at this kind of niche trip, doesn't he, of 2.5 miles. Again, he bumped into Galloping Deschamps last time out at Punchestown in the John Durkan. Well, I don't think we've got a horse of that calibre here in this race, and I think he'll be tough to beat. But yeah, French Dynamite, a horse with a lot of class. You know, he's got Ryanair pretensions, lifetime ambition, who loves the ground, and Who on Calour is an unexposed type who, of course, he was behind Fakir Duderi and the John Durkan, should come on for the run for the Willie Mullins team, who are operating at about a 50% strike rate at the moment. So all in all, this is a really good race in itself. Fakir Duderi, it'll be a case of where they go from here. If he does win, I think naturally they're going to be keeping eyes on Alaho's progress. And if Alaho doesn't make the gig in the Ryanair chase, then Fakir Duderi will probably go there. Last year, of course, they swerved the Ryanair to go to Aintree. But yeah, this is a good race. It's kind of win or bust for Chacun Pour Soi now. It's kind of a new lease of life, a new angle in trying 2.5 miles on soft ground without an Nurgamine. If you can't get the job done here, or at least go very close, you're going to start scratching your head as to how he can revive his old career. But no, I think Fakir Duderi would be the one for me here, Joe.
Yeah, and Stephen, for you as well, I mean, how would you be just pricing this up, first of all?
It's not an easy race to price up. I mean, Ed's touched on all the salient points. I mean, Willie Mullins, last 14 days, 13 winners from 28 runners, 46%. I mean, every time you look up at the screen, there's one in Ireland coming home 3 hurdles in front, sort of 1 to 5. It's become a monopoly. I mean, to slip a moan in it, it's not wonderful for the sport over there because he's so strong. It's only him or Gordon Elliott who seem to be able to win any novice race or any graded race at the moment. So, but his stable form is absolutely fantastic. I mean, the man's a genius, no doubt. But Chacun Pour Soi is now at 11. He's run over fences 15 times. He's won 8 of them. He's never been beyond 2 mile 1. Now, there can't be many horses aged 11 who try a new trip, 2 mile 4 on what's going to be very testing ground, you'd have thought. I mean, I would be very doubtful he'd stay. I'm sure Willie Mullins will know more. If he's able to lead on his own and set a slow pace, then maybe he will. But for me, I've always thought he was quite an exuberant front runner at 2 miles, 2 mile 1. I've never really thought he wants an increased test of stamina on testing ground. So there's plenty of reasons to take him on, not least of all, I don't think he's looked the force of old on a couple of occasions in the last few months. So maybe Fakir Duderi's the one. He ran okay when finishing second last time out, obviously against a very good horse. There's nothing wrong about that run. And Lifetime Ambition, will stay well, must be a runner. It's a really tricky, trappy race, but instinctively I'd be against Chacun Pour Soi. We haven't got any prices at the minute. I mean, I'd imagine the front two would be sort of 6th or 7th or something like that. And I'd be leaning against Chacun Pour Soi if that was the case.
Yeah, of course. Now we will be back on Monday on Irish Racing with Vincent Finnegan, Johnny Ward and Emma Nagle to get the Irish angle. So I'm sure they'll be able to dig deeper into how this race was run and also then the prospects for the future. Maybe the old boy Chacun Pour Soi can learn some new tricks. But that kind of wraps up our race previews. But now we're going to take it to the tips of the week. And Stephen, I'll start with you, please.
Yeah, we've done my betting expert nap of the weekend. Runs on Sunday at Lingfield in the Fleur-de-Lys, 2 o'clock. Sam Brown, another veteran, but he's a real heavy ground sluggard. 1 from 1 at Lingfield. Hopefully with no Bristol de Mai in the race, I think he'll make all the running for the first time in about 2.5 years. As I say, he's got ideal conditions, and Anthony Hannibal is back in form. He wasn't when he disappointed last time. My value angle selection, I've actually gone to the all-weather because I was working under the assumption everything's going to be off. So I've gone to the all-weather at Lingfield on Saturday in the 102. Beau Guest is fully exposed for Tony Carroll, but the yard's flying and ran really well after 7 months off last time out, finishing strongly, back up in trip. Good claimer book, Molly Gunn, who's been catching the eye in a few rides so far. I think that'll run well. And 212, the long shot, barging through. Archie Watson, another trainer, going really well. He's got good Lingfield form. I thought he ran really well 1 start back from the front when he got driven mad on the lead. Then he disappointed at Chelmsford, which is why you're getting a bigger price today about his chances. He's back at Lingfield. I think he's got a bit more improvement to come. He's only run 5 times on the all-weather in his life, so I'm hoping a positive ride from barging through. He can win at a big price for us.
Nice one, Stephen. All best of luck to you and your tips. Of course, we'll be back next week for more advice from you, and stay tuned to bettingexpert.com for more racing tips from Stephen. And Ed, over to you with your tips of the weekend, please.
Yep, indeed. I am off to Haydock, pretty much. I'm hoping it goes ahead. As I say, the photos of Molly Dingwall at the track on Friday look good, shall we say. The course is thawing out. My nap goes in the 12:20 in that graded novice chase. Just the 3 runners essentially look to match on paper between Paul Nicholls, Grade 1 winner Stage Star. But Lac de Constance would be my pick for the Dan Skelton team. Stage Star is more the fact I'm against Stage Star. If you remember, he ran in the Ballymore, won by Sir Gerhard when the monsoons kicked in, and Harry Cobden got off and said, "Look, the horse just absolutely hated that ground." I'd be very nervous about taking a short price about Stage Star on deep ground. Lac de Constance, on the other hand, no problem with it at all, and was in the process of running a big race at Kempton behind Boot Hill last time out when unseating. Well, as I say, at a time when the Scouter team were a little bit off the boil. That yard are flying now. So I've got Lac de Constance to turn over Stage Star. My value, as we've touched upon earlier, I like to move it. I think is the pick. I get very nervous looking at the best part of 2's on Epperton on deep ground. I think I like to move it. He'll go back to his front running tactics, back to 2 miles, and he can cause a minor upset there. And then the long shot is a horse who's been in a notebook for some time, Ulnadam. For the Dan Skelton team. I've got my Dan Skelton t-shirt on for the weekend, it has to be said. But Ulnadam, horse who's lost his way over fences, but he's back over hurdles off a much lower mark. I think he's off 125 here today. All his form on deep ground, he's going to have that, it has to be said. And he's a horse who traditionally, if you look back through his career, Joe, takes a huge step forward for his seasonal reappearance. In fact, I think he's won or been placed on his second start pretty much his entire career. He needs to run first time out, which was the case at Exeter when he came last over fences. He's back over hurdles with that run under his belt, and he's a double figure price for last looking. So Ulnadam be my each way long shot in the that is in the 3:10 at Haydock on Saturday.
Oh, great knowledge as ever. Ed, Stephen, thanks a lot for your views. Be sure to actually gamble safely if you are going to follow the advice of our experts. And like I say, we'll be back on Monday for the Irish angle of Jump to It, and also next Friday for more betting tips from our experts. But that wraps it up for today's show. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you again very soon.